Coming up in our number 10 spot, Up. I'm pretty sure that any living and breathing person on the planet felt something when they watched Up. I mean, the montage of Carl and Ellie's life together could pull at the heartstrings of even the most cynical human, not to mention the arrival of the adorable Boy Scout Russell, who managed to help grumpy old Carl find the joy in life again. And while the story of the balloon lifting them up and taking them to Paradise Falls at first seems like a wholesome and magical event, there are some out there who theorize the story might not be quite as uplifting as what we've all come to believe. The evil theory suggests that Carl is actually dead the whole time, but that he's unable to pass into the afterlife. So in comes Russell, who isn't a young scout trying to earn his wilderness explorer badge, but actually an angel trying to earn his wings by bringing Carl up to heaven, or paradise. The theory then goes on to explain that Charles Muntz, the mad explorer, is really a fallen angel hell-bent on dragging Carl to the underworld with his hellhounds. I mean, as if this movie didn't make me cry enough, the idea that Carl is already dead and that the bad guy is trying to drag him down to hell the whole time is definitely not something I want to be true. Next up at number 9, Inside Out. Out of all the wild and evil fan theories I have come across, this Inside Out theory is definitely one I would have never seen coming. In the movie, the main character Riley has just moved from Minnesota to San Francisco with her family, and she's deeply unhappy. Now, in the movie, it's said that they moved because of her dad's job. However, there is a theory that they actually moved because Riley's mom committed credit card fraud. The reason behind this seemingly out of this world theory, apparently on the back of Riley's mom's credit card, the signature reads K. Ann Anderson, which some people online have pointed out is Bonnie's mom's name in Toy Story 3. However, Riley's mom's name is Jill Anderson, so why would she have a credit card with a different name on it unless she is a credit card stealing criminal who forced her family to move quickly to a new city to avoid being caught? I mean, is it potentially a bit of a stretch? For sure, but that would make it all the more evil if it turned out to be true. Coming in at number 8, Boo. The lovable, babbling Boo is easily one of my favorite characters in Monsters, Inc. But what's interesting about her is that aside from Sully being her monster, we actually don't really know anything about her. But that hasn't stopped fans from trying to find clues. The theory is that Boo, whose real name is apparently Mary, appears to have superpowers like appearing out of nowhere, and theorists claim that Boo is actually a crossover character from the Incredibles universe. But here is where it gets even weirder. Some out there believe that Boo is actually Edna's daughter. Now, we know Edna isn't too fond of tiny humans, so the theory claims that Edna put Boo up for adoption to the superhero Thunderhead, who Edna mentions is good with kids, and whose file also says he has adopted 5 of them. I mean, maybe it's not that evil, but it's definitely strange and definitely has me questioning everything. Coming in at number 7, Toy Story. There are a lot of theories out there specifically about Toy Story, like that Andy's dad is dead, or that the entire franchise is an allegory for the Illuminati, to name a few. However, one of the most evil ones out there is the toy corpse theory. If you haven't heard of it before, it was first theorized after a post to Twitter by the user @Stigib3 that said, quote, "My daughter just ruined Toy Story forever. She said if one of the toys died, Andy wouldn't know and he'd carry on playing with its corpse." I know, super creepy, but let's think about it for a minute. If Andy doesn't know that his toys come alive when he leaves the room, logically, he would have no clue that they could die. So technically speaking, yeah, he could totally just be playing with dead toy corpses unknowingly. That being said, some fans aren't so sure, as they pointed out that the alive toys would probably either bury or at least hide the toys so as not to have to watch or worse, play with their dead friends. However, all that in mind, the sheer idea of the toys being able to die is still super awful. Next up at number 6, Cars. What's not to love about the Cars movie? Spoiled race car moves to small town, hates it at first, but eventually makes new, unsuspecting friends, falls in love, and becomes a good person, or car, happily ever after. But according to some online, the entire world that Cars is set in could be way darker than we ever thought. The theory states that Cars is set incredibly far in the future, like we're talking beyond the WALL-E timeline, wherein the Earth has become completely void of humans and is now only populated by sentient vehicles. Now, that part isn't too crazy. I mean, it's not hard to piece together that it's a world made up of cars that are kind of human-like, but it's an animated movie after all, so most people don't think too hard about it. But have we ever thought about how or why all the humans are gone? This evil theory claims that Cars killed them all, and then using their advanced AI technologies, adopted the personalities of their previous owners. So not only are they killer cars, they would pretty much be identity theft killer robots too. Next up at number 5, Monsters Inc. and Inside Out. It's a pretty popular belief that all the movies in the Disney Pixar canon exist in the same universe, meaning that there is a huge potential for quite a bit of crossover. And Reddit user Ice Metal Punk theorizes a pretty dark concept revolving around the crossover of Inside Out and Monsters Inc. The theory begins by explaining that in Inside Out, we learn that everything forgotten gets dropped into the memory dump, then disappears forever. We see this happen with Bing Bong, Riley's imaginary friend, but did you ever really stop to think about where their forgotten memories actually disappear to? I mean, they have to go somewhere, right? Well, according to this Reddit user, they suggest that the monsters in Monsters Inc. are actually the imaginary friends that humans forget as they grow up, and that the creatures had to learn to live together and form a functioning society. Not only that, but if you also consider the fact that the monsters are scaring their carefully selected tiny humans at the beginning of the movie, would that mean that they are trying to scare the very people who they once were the imaginary friend of? Also, does the memory dump affect them? Like, do they remember their human from before, or is this just some random client to them? I don't know, I have many questions, but mostly, I just hope it's not true. Coming in at number 4, clean energy. Speaking of Monsters Inc. theories, I feel pretty confident saying that this one is probably the strangest and most gruesome I came across. Posted by Reddit user Curly Quickly Colorful, they suggest that Monsters Inc. did not always use screams to make their energy, but once upon a time used blood. Okay? I know what you're thinking, but just stay with me for a minute. They explain that early on in the movie, you hear a commercial coming from Sully's TV talking about producing superior screams that they can refine into clean, dependable energy. And Reddit user suggests that, quote, if the concept of clean energy exists in this world, and they find the need to point it out in their advertising, logic would dictate that a different, theoretically dirtier, form of energy was harvested and utilized to power Monstropolis before Screams. And of course, what is the grossest, most awful thing they could harvest? Well, blood. And as much as I hope to God this theory isn't true, I can kind of see where they came up with it. I mean, if we think about energy in the real world, there is clean energy like solar power compared to dirtier energy like oil, and I suppose blood could be like the oil of the monster world? I don't know, I don't want to think about this one too hard. Coming in at number 3, WALL-E's true identity. While I definitely do not want a robot takeover of the world, if there is one robot who I would gladly share the planet with, it's WALL-E. I mean, not only is he the most adorable thing in the world, making little trash cubes and listening to musicals, but he also saves the world and eventually helps the humans return back home. Or at least that is what most people probably believe. Some, however, have a more cynical view of who WALL-E really is. And they think that he is not a hero at all, but that he is Satan. Yep, you heard that correctly. Let me just read you the quote. We have an entity, WALL-E/Satan, who gives an object, seedling/apple, to a robot/woman named Eve, which starts a chain of events that led to mankind losing a paradise and getting stranded on Earth. They then go on to explain that, quote, by the end of the movie, mankind has made its return to Earth, but they no longer lead an easygoing, carefree life. Now they must perform back-breaking labor in order to bring Earth back to a habitable evil state, leaving the relative paradise of the Axiom behind. Inevitably, this will lead to inequity and resource disparity, which in turn will lead to conflict, strife, and jealousy, which will lead to anger, hatred, and war, and perhaps the eventual re-destruction of the planet Earth. Then, once more, humans will be forced to leave their homeworld behind, floating through space in search of a better life, seeking the paradise they lost after the plant bearer tempted Eve. I mean, it's hard to get more evil than Satan, and the most lovable character somehow being evil incarnate is just about the worst thing I can think of. Coming in at number 2, WALL-E Universe. While we're on the topic of strange theories about the beloved robot, a video posted on YouTube by user MattPat has a chilling theory that will definitely be keeping me awake at night. MattPat begins by explaining that the idea that the Earth could be completely covered in trash in the time frame that the film sets it up in is not only unrealistic, but impossible. Instead, he theorized that the planet was not actually destroyed by human greed, as the viewers are led to believe, but instead that, by and large, the giant monopoly company purposefully ruined it. He says, quote, "We see abandoned buildings, light poles, street signs, and other indicators that this once was a thriving metropolis. This indicates the breakdown of one of the most basic things for a modern society to function, a waste management system that transports waste out of the city towards landfills." Pat says that from the looks of it, Starliners were designed as a luxury space cruise, but the company couldn't convince people to go on their holidays, so they had to find a way to force people onto these ships, and that essentially, in order to force Earth's population onto the BNL ships like Axiom, they stopped funding waste management, convinced the people it was their fault, and drove them to live on the ship where they would have no choice but to consume all BNL products for the rest of their lives. I mean, talk about evil. Last up in our number 1 spot is Nemo. Since its release in 2003, the story of Nemo has stolen the hearts of people all around the globe. But what if I told you that some people out there are questioning the wholesome story of a dad looking for his lost son, and that maybe it could actually be much darker than meets the eye? As we know, the beginning of the film starts off incredibly somber. Marlin and his wife are attacked by a barracuda, and tragically his wife, along with all but one egg, are eaten, and that one remaining egg grows to be Nemo, whom Marlin is incredibly protective of. But Reddit user Darklighter5000 suggests that the barracuda actually ate all the eggs, and that Marlin, struggling to cope with his reality, creates a world where one survives, meaning that Nemo is entirely a figment of Marlin's imagination, and that we're watching Marlin deal with his grief by inventing a story where he's trying to save his son. This theory is backed by a few points, the first being that Nemo in Latin means no one, and so the title of the film is technically Finding No One. The second is that the show goes through the different stages of grief. Denial, he won't let his son go to school because it's not safe. Then anger, he scolds his son for venturing out of his control. Next, bargaining, he makes friends with an amnesiac travel buddy to help him find his son. Followed by despair, he sees his son flushed down the drain. And lastly, acceptance, he learns to let go. What do you think? Could Nemo really be dead?
At number 10, fake it till you make it. Disney is often referred to as the happiest place on Earth. A pretty big claim, but in their efforts to keep the park so positive, they have a few tricks up their sleeves. If you've been to Disney and skipped out on a ride due to the long wait time listed, you may want to reconsider next time. Disney uses the trick of overestimating wait time so you'll think you waited less than you were supposed to. This keeps guests in line happier for longer. Another thing that may seem totally normal are the American flags located all over the park. The flags located within Disney are often missing one of the stars or stripes. Why would they do this? Well, by omitting something from the original flag, it means they don't have to follow standard American flag regulations, like flying them at half-mast at certain times. I mean, that's pretty smart. It's never a happy thing when a flag is at half-mast, so it's fitting they would try to avoid having to do that. When they say Disney is very detail-oriented, they aren't kidding. The last thing I'll mention that may seem real, but is really just the park making the rides seem crazier than they are is their use of dramatic effects. If you walk past the Twilight Zone or Tower of Terror, you'll hear a lot of screaming. Some of those screams are real, but some are apparently fake and being played through the speakers to entice more guests to go in. Also, the boats at Splash Mountain don't actually cause such a big splash. There are cannons at the end of the drop that make the huge splashes of water. Real or fake, if it makes the day more fun, I'll take it. Number 9. Underground tunnels. The rumors are true. There is an entire tunnel system under the park. By the time you reach the entrance of the Magic Kingdom, you probably won't even notice that you've been walking up a slight incline ever since getting off the monorail or ferry. By the time you reach the iconic castle, you'll have already reached the 3rd floor level. Rumor has it the reason they created the underground tunnel system is because of Walt Disney himself. Walt was wandering through Tomorrowland in Disneyland as a staff member dressed as a cowboy walked by him on his way to his position at Frontierland. One look told Disney that a cowboy dressed in a checkered shirt, bandana, and cowboy boots twirling a 6-shooter looked totally out of place in Tomorrowland. Walt didn't want anything to distract visitors from their magical experience, like an old cowboy walking through the future, so when it came time for Disney World in Florida, they planned for the underground world. Due to Florida's high water table, digging out a basement was out of the question, so Disney improvised by building the tunnels at ground level and creating the world right on top. A former employee said, "Under the Magic Kingdom there are tons of underground tunnels. I could pop up almost anywhere in the park I wanted. Epcot has a tunnel underneath as well." Say what you will about Walt, but he really was dedicated to keeping the illusion alive. Number 8. No breaking character. I think we all know by now that Disney really wants to keep the illusion alive at all times. Having said that, have you ever thought about how the characters who have to wear suits all day don't get super hot? Well, the short answer is they do, but it doesn't matter. Staff members who have to wear large costumes, which I would imagine get pretty stuffy, have to simply ignore the heat and get on with it no matter what. One Reddit user shared a story and said, "A scuba instructor I had once told me that he applied for the job as Water Goofy on a Disney cruise. Water Goofy is simply Goofy who hangs out by the pool. But before he could accept the job, the scuba instructor had to agree that in the event he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards remove his costume. You know, so they don't upset the children. CPR would not be performed on scene." I mean, I understand no breaking character, but come on, I really think that in this situation, a few upset children would be worth saving the person's life. But hey, Disney doesn't mess around. The rule goes for employees at parks as well. If you're too hot or dying, do it somewhere else. Luckily, each character is always accompanied by a supervisor that helps them know where they need to go and when. So if things were really getting serious, the supervisor is there to help out. At number 7. Too many gators. Walt Disney World is located in Orlando, Florida. One thing Florida is known for is their alligators. While Disney does pull out all the stops in order to keep the park magical, they have had their fair share of run-ins with gators. In 2016, a 2-year-old boy passed away at the Seven Seas Lagoon due to an alligator. Since then, more than 200 alligators have been removed from the parks. The company has worked with trappers contracted through the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission to remove the gators. Most of the pests taken from Disney are euthanized and sold for their hide and meat. Some are also transferred to alligator farms, animal exhibits, and zoos. After the incident in 2016, Disney installed a wall and put up reptile warning signs along waterways throughout the resort. It would definitely take you out of the magic of Disney if you spot a large gator in the water, but they now have a trapper on hand and take care of any sightings. It is Florida, so there really isn't much more the park can do except keep an eye and be proactive. To be considered a nuisance within the statewide nuisance alligator program, an alligator must be at least 4 feet long and pose a threat to people, pets, and/or property. Not long ago, guests spotted a live alligator at Magic Kingdom. Disney can train their performers and dress them to the nines and make all the illusions as real as can be, but the only thing they struggle with is those gators. Unfortunately, even if you are at Disney World, you're still in Florida. Number 6. Strict appearance rules. Dressing as a Disney princess sounds like a pretty good gig, and I think many who have had the job would say that it is. But they may also tell you it's a job that comes with a whole lot of pressure. Working as a Disney princess takes a whole lot more than just throwing on the dress and waving to the guests. All of the performers have to undergo several rounds of auditions, with staff usually having to play multiple characters in the park depending on staffing. When auditioning, everything is being considered: your height, weight, voice, etc. in order for the character to get their voices just right, the performers will watch Disney movies of their characters and repeat the lines back. For most girls, the character's voice is higher than their real voice, so high that some women will go on vocal rest due to strained vocal cords. One former employee shared that despite participating in Disney's college program, she was never able to play a face character because she was too ethnic looking, despite being Italian. Disney favors light hair and skin people so they can play multiple characters. Another employee shares that many of her colleagues have been disapproved of working as face characters because they've either aged or gained weight. It's not a good job for your self-esteem, it sounds like. Apparently, they bring you in once a month, put you in the costume, and reevaluate you. If you're disapproved due to weight gain, you wouldn't be fired, simply switch to a more covered up character. This has led to employees feeling body shamed or that they need to take unhealthy measures to stay thin. Basically, Disney doesn't play around with continuity. The Cinderella you see in the morning will be the same you see in the afternoon, regardless if it's the same actor or not. At number 5, painful costumes. Becoming a character from such loved Disney movies and meeting kids that think you're the real deal would definitely be fun. But I think the amount of fun you have as a staff member really depends on which character you are. Former character employees told Mental Floss that they've been basically beaten up by visitors and little kids, but the real wear and tear comes from the fur costumes. Apparently every character employee starts out as a fur character, and these costumes can weigh as much as 47 pounds. In 2005, the last year this data was available, the heavy suits were blamed for 282 injuries. One former fur character shared that while in costume she was punched, put in a chokehold, and had her shoulder partly dislocated and bruised 3 fingers. This performer eventually went to physical therapy for her shoulder and needed knee surgery thanks to the weight of the costume. That year, character performers across the 4 parks that made up Disney World reported 773 injuries total. 49 of those cited the heavy costume heads as the case of injury. Another performer once had to go on temporary disability leave after a guest picked her up and shook her while she was playing Minnie Mouse, resulting in whiplash from the weight of the mouse head. Of the 773 injuries, 107 were the result of some sort of aggressive behavior, whether intentional or not, from guests. I guess some Disney visitors get a little too into the fantasy and forget there are people inside working those suits. Luckily, they have rules in place of how long a performer can be in costume at a time before needing a break, which is usually no longer than 45 minutes. At number 4, poorly treated princesses. The princesses in the park are one of the most magical parts of visiting Disney. Decked out with the dress, hair, and accessories, tons of kids and adults are able to make their dreams of meeting their favorite Disney princesses in real life come true. Unfortunately, like with most nice things, there's always someone right there ready to ruin it. Many employees, usually the women characters, say they've experienced inappropriate sexual behavior from park visitors. I know there are unfortunately few jobs that women don't experience this behavior, but the difference with Disney is they can't break character. Reddit user Little Bones wrote, "I was a Tinkerbell performer for Walt Disney World about 3 years ago, and I can't count how many times people would ask me what's under my dress or tried to touch me. I would always shame them to my PhotoPass attendant, their families, and the people in line by loudly exclaiming, 'You want to know what's under my dress? Well, there's pixie dust, of course,' or 'This man's a pirate, he's trying to reach the pixie dust that I keep under my dress,' and they'd walk away in shame like the creepy a-holes they are. It's pretty scary that they can't do much about the harassment, but it's even more scary that there are people at a place full of children sexualizing and literally touching a fictional character made for kids. It may be where dreams come true, but even Disney can't weed out all the creeps at the door." Number 3, shared undies. Alright, this one is seriously my least favorite thing I learned about Disney when making this video. Aside from the fabulous park, action-packed rides, and all the snacks your Disney heart could want, one of the best part about the park is the opportunity to meet your favorite characters in person. Disney cast members go above and beyond to ensure guests visiting the park are experiencing the magic. Well, back in the day, according to reports, Disneyland used to force cast members to share underwear as a part of the costume for work. Ew. The report stated that cast members inside the costumes had to wear regulation company-issued underwear. If you were to wear your own, you would create a visible line that the guests could see. So instead of just giving the cast members their own pack of the proper undies to take home at the end of each shift, employees had to hand in their underwear for washing. This was the way for a while, but the washing of the underwear was so bad they had to stop using the system in 2001. The report said when they started receiving dirty and smelly underwear at the start of their shifts and contracting nasty conditions like pubic lice and scabies, people started to suspect that the underwear garments weren't actually being washed very well. You think? Like, I actually want to gag. Imagine getting ready for work and putting on someone else's dirty undies. And they aren't just dirty undies. They were worn for an entire shift in a heavy costume in the heat, dirty. Disney finally declared that while they still had to wear the uniform underwear, cast members could wash them at home. Number 2. Real bones. One thing I know for certain about Disney is they try super hard to make everything look as real as possible. A place that was no exception was the Pirates of the Caribbean ride located in Adventureland. The park was so committed to making things visually appealing that even fake bones used for the skeletons on the ride were not good enough. That's right, when the Pirates of the Caribbean ride opened at Disneyland in 1967, each and every skeleton on the attraction was made of actual human bones. The ride opened just months after Walt Disney's passing and was the last he personally oversaw. One thing, however, the Imagineers couldn't recreate was skeletons. The technology of the time wasn't sophisticated enough to make skeletons that the company felt met their standard of realism. So as a solution, they decided not to fake it and get the real deal. They went right to UCLA, where they were able to get real human skeletons for the ride. Probably not what the people who donated their remains to UCLA's medical center imagined their bones would be used for, but hey, I guess chilling at Disney in the afterlife wouldn't be too bad. If being around real human remains gives you the creeps, don't worry, because they didn't last forever. Eventually, as fake skeletons and technology improved, a new generation of Imagineers were able to replace the real ones. After being replaced, the real remains were later returned to their countries of origin and given a proper burial. Today, Disneyland says there are no longer any human remains on the ride. That being said, some people are still unconvinced. Jason Petros of Ears Up Disney podcast has a blog post detailing where he believes there are 4 remaining instances of, well, remains. I can't see why they wouldn't remove all the old bones, but hey, you never know, Disney does love its Easter eggs. And at number 1, spreading ashes at Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion is one of Disney's most famous attractions, located in Liberty Square at Magic Kingdom Park. While it is called the Haunted Mansion, it's not actually haunted, and they keep the scare factor pretty mild. That being said, the mansion does hold a pretty haunted secret. Apparently, a lot of people like to scatter the ashes of their loved ones at the park, but more specifically inside the Haunted Mansion. I mean, if you're gonna spread ashes at Disney, the Haunted Mansion does seem like a pretty fitting place. It sounds a bit wild, but in 2018 a report by Wall Street Journal confirmed this fact and even stated that custodians at the park use code words to tackle said problem. HEPA cleanup is used, named after the special vacuum filter needed to suck up very fine particles like ashes and their residue. A story about the Haunted Mansion ride states that people believe that by scattering the ashes on the ride, they join the ghosts and live in the theme park forever. Considering Disney is referred to as the happiest place on earth, I understand why some people would have their wish to be scattered there. However, every time someone sneaks ashes into the park, whether it be in medicine bottles, purses, or makeup compacts, without proper permission, it violates the health and safety code, and they have to shut down the park because of it. One Disney custodian told the Wall Street Journal, "The Haunted Mansion probably has so much human ashes in it that it's not even funny." Yikes. The Haunted Mansion may not have been haunted when it first opened, but at this point, it just might be.
Starting us off at number 10 is Lake Buena Vista Airport. If there is one thing that Disney does best, it's branding their empire. And once upon a time, an airport, of all things, was a part of the Disney dynasty. You see, when Walt was first trying to create Epcot, the community, not the theme park, he wanted a regional airport with 4 runways. This vision did not quite come to fruition, but what we did get was the 1971 Buena Vista Airport. This boutique airport, if you will, was only used by 2 airlines and was meant for Disney guests and employees, and the biggest feature it became known for was that When You Wish Upon a Star played after landing thanks to small grooves in the runway. However, cute factor aside, despite Walt's grand plans, the dream began to die in the 1980s with the construction of the monorail. The airport, now surrounded on either side, became dangerous to use, and so eventually no more flights were allowed in or out. Nowadays, the abandoned airport is mostly used for storage and parking rather than an attraction for the public, but it's said that Walt's abandoned plane is hidden somewhere on the lot, and who knows, maybe his ghost is still in there. Next up at number 9, the Wonders of Life Pavilion. I don't know about you, but when I think about Disney, I don't usually jump to health education. Well, as it turns out, the plan for the original Epcot included a pavilion that was to be dedicated to life and health, which eventually made its debut in 1989. The main attraction of this pavilion was called Body Wars, which was a ride that aimed to simulate what it felt like to travel through the human bloodstream, which Had I had the chance, I would for sure have wanted to get on to live out my magic school bus dreams. However, despite running for nearly 18 years, the Wonders of Life Pavilion closed without any explanation in January 2007. At the time of its closure, there were of course tons of rumors. However, the true reason has never been verified. It was just boarded up and closed off, which is definitely a bit suspicious, but could there be something they are hiding from the public that's locked away? I guess we'll never know. Next up at number 8, Pirates of the Caribbean. As the legend goes, during the construction for the Florida version of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, a welder named George was killed in an accident. Now, the exact accident that happened to George does vary depending on who you ask. Some say he was crushed by a falling beam, while others say that he fell from the burning city portion of the ride and died as a result. But no matter how he died, everyone can agree on one thing, that he remains haunting the ride and terrorizing anyone who dares disrespect him. It's said George will stop the ride if he hears you say that you don't believe he's real, and superstitious cast members will greet George when they arrive and say goodbye when they leave to try and stay on his good side. So, with that being said, while it's not technically prohibited, it's not exactly somewhere you want to mess with. So if you do decide to take your chances, make sure you don't piss off George. You never know what might happen. Next up at number 7, Haunted Mansion. This next one is a story from a visitor at Disney World in Florida while riding the Haunted Mansion, who claims they witnessed a ghost and allegedly have the photo to prove it. Quote, "As you'll see in the photo, it appears as though a young boy is peeking his head out of the doom buggy and looking directly at me. Not only was he not there when I took the pic, there wasn't a boy of this age within 20 people in front of me in line. And as you can see, he's only a few doom buggies in front of me. Not only that, what's he doing looking at me? There is no flash and no visible light coming from me. It's all infrared and invisible to the naked eye." So could it be that the Haunted Mansion is in fact haunted by real ghosts? Just tread carefully if you try to find out for yourself. You never know what they could want from you. Next up at number 6, Walt's apartment. Depending on how much of a Disney fan you are, you may or may not be familiar with a certain apartment that's located above the firehouse on Main Street at Disneyland. The reason for this apartment was initially nothing terribly exciting, but simply because Mr. Disney himself wanted a place to stay that was on the property to make those late nights and early mornings a little easier. Now, to be fair, Walt's apartment isn't really prohibited anymore. You can go see it if you like, but the question is, should you? While nowadays a light is always left on in the front window, according to the legend, this wasn't always the case. It's said that one day a cast member looking after the apartment tried to turn the light off before leaving. However, after leaving the building, she looked up only to notice that the light was still on upstairs. Confused, but assuming she must have forgotten, she went back up to turn it off and came back downstairs. But once again, it was on. So she went up again, unplugged the lamp, only to find it once again still somehow back on by the time she came downstairs. The final time she went up, she heard an angry voice saying, quote, "I'm still here." And she was so frightened, she ran away and never returned back to work. Who could that voice have belonged to? No one knows for sure, but the light remains on so as to never anger it again. Coming in at number 5, Dolly's Dip. In 1984, Regina Young, or Dolly as she liked to go by, was tragically killed while riding the Matterhorn. It seems there was a malfunction in Dolly's seatbelt, resulting in her falling out of the bobsled and being struck by an oncoming sled. The family eventually settled with the park, and the park simultaneously changed the kinds of seatbelts used for that attraction. However, the park says that the two events events are unrelated. Now, of course, the Matterhorn remains a public ride, so you're free to take your chances on it, but be warned, it's said that the ghost of Dolly haunts the ride, specifically at the location she was killed. Referred to as Dolly's Dip, visitors and employees alike say they have been haunted by her presence while inside. Some say they can feel her watching them, while others claim to have seen a full-bodied apparition. But unless you're looking for a little paranormal action on your next Disney trip, then I would suggest lining up for a different ride. Coming in at number 4, Nara Dreamland. Located in Japan, Nara Dreamland opened its doors to the public back in 1961. Now, from the get-go, the plan for this park was to be a part of the Disney franchise. In fact, Kunizo Matsuo, president of the Matsuo Entertainment Company, apparently met with Walt Disney to discuss the attraction with the plan of it being an official Disney park in mind. However, allegedly, after disagreements over the licensing fees for using the Disney characters, there was a huge falling out and Nara Dreamland was officially not an affiliated park. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what the hell is this doing on a Disney list? Well, despite its lack of official Disney representation, it sure resembles a Disney park if I've ever seen one. Or rather, it did prior to its 2006 closure. Attractions like a large Matterhorn mountain, castle, and even a monorail found, and for many years it remained a ghost town, overgrown with nature and filled with an eerie presence. This, of course, caught the attention of Disney and horror fans alike for a while, but you had to be incredibly careful, as it was said visitors could be fined and arrested for trespassing into the abandoned property. However, as of 2017, the former theme park was demolished, but make no mistake, it's still not somewhere you should go poking around. While it was abandoned, some that snuck in complained of feeling like they were being watched or haunted by an angry entity, and it's believed that those same ghosts still haunt the grounds where it used to stand. Coming in at number 3, Nighttime Trespassers. In 1966, 19-year-old Thomas Guy Cleveland tried to sneak into Anaheim's Disneyland by scaling the park's outer fence and climbing along the monorail track. Now, why he was trying to sneak in after hours, we don't really know. But nonetheless, his devious plan all came to a halt when a nearby security guard noticed him. At first, he approached to get him to leave, but then he noticed a monorail was making its way along the tracks, and so he began yelling at Cleveland to get out of the way. At this point, Cleveland jumped and landed on a fiberglass canopy beneath the track to try and clear it, but unfortunately the canopy did not keep him safe. From there, the 25-km/h monorail struck Cleveland and dragged his body for 40 feet down the track. By the time the monorail had made a complete stop, his body had been torn to pieces. So whatever you do, for the love of God, don't try to scale the wall and sneak in at night. It might be the last night you ever have. Coming in at number 2, Discovery Island. Originally called Treasure Island, after the 1950 film of the same name, this Disney park opened to the public in 1974 as a premier tourist destination for Disney fans of all ages. Accessible only by resort boat or Disney cruise lines, the original park revolved around the theme of shipwrecks, secret caves, and buried treasure. However, in April 1976, Disney decided to rebrand to the new Discovery Island. This rebranding waved goodbye to pirate boats and treasure and instead welcomed rich flora and fauna, hoping to invite a more relaxing atmosphere, all while simultaneously showcasing and protecting Florida's local wildlife, which, to be fair, it did for a while. Discovery Island was accredited by the Association of Zoological Parks and Aquariums, and at its peak housed over 500 endangered species. However, much to the public's surprise, Discovery Island was abandoned in 1999. The animals were relocated to a new park, Animal Kingdom, and the island park has remained a ghost town ever since. Now, while it's sort of unclear as to why it shut down, some reasons include wild roaming alligators, along with deadly bacteria found in the park's waters. And while all of that might sound intriguing, I promise you, you do not want to try and visit this one. Walt Disney World has banned all outings to the park. In fact, you're not allowed to get within 50 feet of its shoreline, and legal action can be taken if you're found trespassing. And that's not just a threat. People have actually actually been banned from all Disney parks for life for attempting to visit. So yeah, if I were you, I would steer clear of this one. And last up in our number 1 spot, River Country. After opening as the first water park at the Walt Disney World Resort in 1976, River Country was a popular destination for many years. And out of all of the places on this list, this one definitely has the wildest backstory. Controversy around the water park started to bubble up back in 1980 when a boy tragically died there due to an amoeba that was found in the water. The amoeba in question managed to kill him by attacking his brain and nervous system. However, Disney was absolved of the blame due to the fact that that specific amoeba could have bred in any fresh water. But the story's not done yet. Fast forward 2 years to 1982, and another boy died at River Country, this time from drowning on the Whoop'n'Holler slide. This time Disney was sued by the family of the boy, who claimed that there was no proper warning about how deep the water was, and a lifeguard testified, admitting that they had to routinely save dozens of people from that slide on a daily basis. Even so, the park remained open. Then in 1989, another boy drowned there. However, it wasn't until the events in September of 2001 went down that Disney was forced to close the park due to the nationwide tourism cutback. From that day forward, the doors have remained shut and the park has been closed off to the public, though some believe that those who have lost their lives still roam around haunting the grounds.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Whispering Statue. Well, this doesn't sound terrifying at all. Okay. Over at Disneyland, Florida, there's a bronze statue of Goofy. He's 10 feet tall, he's shiny, he's sitting in the sun all day long, so he's probably boiling hot to touch. Well, rumor has it, if you sit next to Goofy on that bench for long enough, the guy might start whispering sweet nothings in your magic Mickey Mouse ears that you bought for $79. This statue can be found near the Lady and the Tramp restaurant over in Tony's Town. Number 9. Caution, do not pull rope. Do not pull the rope. Don't do it. Normally when we see a sign that tells us not to do something, we listen, especially if it's near Indiana Jones' adventure ride at Disneyland, Florida. You don't want to be running away from any rolling boulders, you know what I mean? Can't be poking around ancient cursed artifacts, my friend. This one's waiting for you in the queue area, so next time you're in line and you're bored out of your mind, maybe do pull a rope or two, see what happens. After the first tug, you'll hear a voice. A nearby excavator will tell you to cut it out. It's kind of funny, whatever. If you pull it a second time, you'll hear loud noises, crashes, and a big bang. It's actually pretty alarming. Apparently it scares a lot of kids, which is pretty fun. And it's all your fault. That's right, all because you pulled that rope. Better keep that line moving. Sounds like a heap of hurt waiting for you. Number 8. Musical manholes. Disneyland is full of magic. There's animatronics that move on their own, statues that whisper in your ears when you don't expect it. There's music in the air and also in the ground, apparently. In Disneyland, Florida's Toontown, there's a big fountain with Mickey leading an orchestra. Now these instruments aren't doing much, that is, until you stand on a tune hole cover. That's when corresponding instruments start to fire up. So if you have enough friends or family members, you could start an entire orchestra for guests at the park, and they would have no idea it's because of you and your tune manhole cover. There's probably many of you who don't know this and accidentally stepped on a tuba cover. You're like, what was that? Number 7, hidden Mickeys. When Walt Disney himself said, "I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse," I got to thinking, which mouse? Was it Stuart Little? Who was he talking about here? Was he talking about the mouse with an ear on its back? That's always a fun one. Or Mickey Mouse, of course. The iconic 3 circles that puts your imagination to the test. If you're visiting Disney Orlando anytime soon, keep an eye open for the hundreds of Mickey Mouse symbols hidden around the park. Yep, they're hidden in the walls, the floors, paintings. In total, there's rumored to be over 1,000 hidden Mickey Mouse logos. Number 6. No more dragons. Disney's Animal Kingdom was originally supposed to have even more animal goodness. Can you believe that? Even more magic. The park originally planned for 3 types of areas, 3 different themes. Animals that are real but now extinct, and animals that are mythological, like unicorns or even dragons per se. Evidence of this can be found looking directly at you when you enter the park. Right in the Animal Kingdom sign in front of the park, you can see a dragon representing the never finished Beastly Kingdom. That'd have been a lot of fun, Beastly Kingdom. You're like, is it real? I don't think it's real. Number 5. Cinderella's Suite. Cinderella's castle at Disney World is the main attraction. Without that castle, it would just be a regular theme park. Of course, the castle is a smaller scale than a real medieval one, obviously, so it's a surprise to find out that there's actually a real hidden suite in that castle. And yes, it's quite magical. To get there, you'll need to take a pumpkin carriage elevator. How magical is that? And then in the actual suite, you'll find 2 beds and a pull-out couch. Yeah, nothing more enchanting than a pull-out couch. That's fun. That'd probably be mine if I went with friends for sure. There's stained glass windows, a fireplace to keep you warm in Orlando, Florida. But I almost forgot the most important detail. You need to be invited. Of course, you can't just waltz in there. It's not an Airbnb. Get out of here. You have to win a contest in order to even get in the building. To be honest, I don't think I'd want to spend the night here. It doesn't look cozy at all. Looks kind of scary and boring. Pull-out couches? Also, no way. Number 4. Underground tunnels. In a place like Disney, there has to be room for employees to take a breather, right? That much time in character, all those high fives. I get it. I've done mascot work for a theme park. It's hot, it's sweaty, it's a lot of yuck going on inside that mask, right? It's not the easiest job. But they're human too. They need to take breaks, they need to clock in and clock out. Where does that magic happen? Well, this needs to be away from the public eye, right? You can't have people watch as Mickey takes his head off to go for a smoke. No way, obviously. So instead, Disney has hidden underground tunnels to move around the park without worrying about staying in character or getting caught in large crowds. During the early park days, Walt Disney himself saw a cowboy from Frontierland walk through Tomorrowland to get to his post. And it just didn't make any sense, you know? It took the magic out of the air. More than fair. So in turn, he made 392,000 square feet of underground tunnels, and that ought to do the trick. Yeah, and also, yes, they look creepy. There's zero magic in these tunnels. Number 3, teacups. The teacup ride is one of the best hidden gems in the park. The Fantasyland Spin Fest is worth waiting for if you know which cups to run for. And yes, it turns out it does matter. You always see kids running, you're like, does it matter? They're all the same. No, it definitely does matter. I was wrong my whole life. There's 18 teacups in total, and the speeds all vary. Here's a hot tip. The orange teacup with diamonds and the purple teacup, they go the fastest. All right, so pass that on. Pass it on to your family and friends. There you go. There's 2 teacups with hearts, and yes, they might be lovely, but these ones are the slower teacups. So if your date is like, oh, these ones look romantic, don't do it, okay? We gotta go to this one. We gotta go fast today. We gotta whip. That wheel in the center, we're not here for fun, okay? We're here for speed. We're clocking in numbers today. We're hitting G-forces. Number 2, family of the day. If you're a family of early birds and you also love waiting outside of amusement parks, well, have I got the place for you, my friends? Here we go. Every morning there's a loud opening ceremony known as the rope drop. This happens when the park first opens, right in the morning. The only way to get picked, according to insiders, is to have matching Disney gear and to arrive early and show energy. Nice. So no crying at 7 a.m., okay? This is Disneyland, okay? This is magical. Don't ruin our day. The family gets a tour of Main Street before it opens to the general public, and you get to walk around with Mickey and the gang all the way to the Magic Kingdom train station. And then they get to see the morning crowd all arrive and gather below. Major Willy Wonka vibes going on with this one. I don't know if I'd want a morning tour with all the mascots as they're waking up, yawning, giving me high fives. I'm all set. And finally, number 1, the spitting camel. If you thought Gold Tooth Goofy was fascinating, well, buckle up, Imagineers. In 2019, this secret location was actually removed. And honestly, good thing. Gone, but certainly not forgotten. That's why I'm here. Since 2001, the grounds of Magic Carpets of Aladdin were refreshing, to say the least. In Adventureland and Magic Kingdom, you'd be walking near the attraction, when all of a sudden water would hit you in the face from somewhere. From something. Yeah, it turns out that camel that sits in front of the ride, he would sometimes squirt water out of its mouth randomly into some poor soul's retina. How lovely is that? Yeah, some lukewarm Florida pipe water hitting you directly in the pupil. How magical is that? There you go. Grab a hat on the way out. As of 2019, the spitting camel has since been removed, but fear not, there's still the other camel. Let's just hope this one doesn't gain the ability to, project swamp water at passerbyers. That would be nice if it just stayed put.
Starting us off at number 10, Hans can time travel. The villain of Frozen, Hans, is not a hard person to hate. At the end of the first movie, after imprisoning Anna and, just trying to ruin everything, Hans is arrested and banished from Arendelle for his treason and attempting to take out the royal sisters. But what if the ending was a little more complicated than we are led to believe? This theory pointed out that in Big Hero 6, there is an Easter egg where if you pay very close attention, you'll see a wanted poster for Hans in the police station. Now, for all of this to make sense, that would have to mean that Hans can time travel, since Big Hero 6 and Frozen are set like hundreds hundreds of years apart. Now, this would mean that after being exiled from Arendelle, he managed to travel to a new time in the universe where no one knew his evil deeds and start over. But of course, in this new time, he's wanted, meaning that there is a whole other group of people he could have hurt, backstabbed, or most terrifyingly of all, killed. So let's just hope this Easter egg is one that turns out to be unfounded. Coming in at number 9, the Ice Spirit. This next theory imagines not only a crossover with another Disney film, but a cross-universe theory outside of the Disney canon. It begins by stating that in Frozen 2, during the song Show Yourself, you can see Elsa's mom calling to the siren. Now, this is all possible because of her family's past using dark magic in order to use the power of the Ice Spirit, hence why Elsa has ice powers in the first place. Now, the theory part of all of this comes into play from an episode of Once Upon a Time, where Elsa's character in that show explained that Elsa's mom has an ancestor called Olaf, who also happens to have ice powers. So with that in mind, this theory suggests that when Elsa is singing Let It Go, she was actually possessed by her ancestor Olaf's ghost, who she then managed to bring back to life in snowman form. I mean, does it require a little bit of stretching to make it all work? I mean, kinda, but the idea that my sweet little Olaf was actually the one possessing Elsa is definitely not something I want to be true. Coming in at number 8, Tarzan crossover. Just like every other franchise on the planet, there are tons of fans out there who try to find links to interconnect as many of the Disney movies into one universe as possible. And one of the most wild ones I have ever read about is the Tarzan and Frozen crossover. So if you've seen Frozen, you'll recall that a major plot point in the beginning of the film is that the Queen and King of Arendelle get tragically lost at sea when Elsa and Anna are young. And while it isn't explicitly said, it is presumed that the pair die at sea. However, many fans speculate that their fate could actually have been a bit more complicated than that. One fan theory suggests that while the ship almost definitely capsized and sank, that they did not go down with it and instead became stranded on a deserted island. From there, fans have speculated that the Queen was actually pregnant at the time they became stranded, gave birth, and tragically died shortly after, and that offspring of the royal couple was none other than Tarzan. Coming in at number 7, Walt Disney. This next one is more of a conspiracy, and while I will admit it is a bit far-fetched, it would also be very creepy if it turned out to be true. The conspiracy begins back in the year 1972, after the LA Times reported that Mr. Walt Disney was apparently interested in the cryogenic process. And while it is widely accepted that Mr. Disney was cremated, it began a huge conspiracy that he was actually cryogenically frozen and is hidden somewhere on the Disney property. This rumor only continued to grow and grow as the years went by, and eventually Google search related to Disney's possible frozen body was off the charts. Now, how does this relate to the smash hit film? Well, some fans are claiming that the Disney studio chose the name Frozen to distract people from the truth. Plus, now if you search Disney Frozen, it will take quite a bit of searching before you come across this conspiracy. One YouTuber even pointed out that, quote, like a lot of Disney movies, Frozen is loosely based off of an old fairy tale called The Snow Queens by Hans Christian Andersen. It could have been called anything, The Ice Princess, or Snow Sisters, for example. I mean, do I think that Walt Disney is cryogenically frozen in secret and that the Disney creators named a hit movie Frozen to get the scent off their tracks? I mean, I am not totally sold, but hey, I guess stranger things have turned out to be true. Coming in at number 6, the ship. Okay, so I think it's pretty fair to say that not every single fan theory can always coexist. So while there are some out there who believe that Tarzan is the long-lost brother of the Arendelle Kingdom, there are others out there that believe Frozen is linked to a different movie entirely, The Little Mermaid. The idea with this theory is that the ship that we see at the bottom of the ocean in The Little Mermaid is actually the exact same one the king and queen were tragically lost at sea on. Now, before I get into this theory, there is another really popular theory that states Rapunzel is the cousin of Elsa and Anna, meaning that either the king or queen of Corona would be the brother or sister of either the king or queen of Arendelle. So because of that theory, it's been suggested that the mysterious trip the royal couple were on was in fact to visit the kingdom of Corona. Now, with that in mind, we know Frozen is set in Norway, Tangled is set in Germany, and The Little Mermaid is set in Denmark. And Denmark is roughly halfway between the other two, so if fans are correct, that means on their way to visit Germany, their ship sank and became the ship Ariel explores in The Little Mermaid. What do you think? Could it be the same ship? Coming in at number 5, the Trolls and Kristoff. While the Trolls are written to be savers of the day and beloved family of Kristoff, there are some fans out there who are not so inclined to believe the story at face value. And the reason all has to do with traditional Scandinavian folklore. So first things first, although Frozen is obviously set in a fictitious land called Arendelle, it is quite heavily based on Norway and Scandinavian culture. And apparently, in Scandinavian folklore, trolls are actually much more untrustworthy than Frozen makes them out to be. So with that in mind, there are some out there that believe Kristoff was actually kidnapped by the trolls rather than adopted, meaning that he may not have actually been an orphan at all. The theory relies on the fact that we never actually explicitly see Kristoff lose his parents, and so it's fair to assume he could have been related to one of the ice harvesters. Then early on in the movie, we see the young Kristoff follow the royals who lead him to the trolls, and from there, a troll named Bolda finds him and quickly decides to keep Kristoff as her own. From that point forward, Kristoff becomes brainwashed and amalgamated into the troll's way of life and completely forgets the life he had before. I mean, talk about an evil theory. Coming in at number 4, memory loss. In Frozen 2, the dad tells Anna and Elsa a story of the enchanted forest and the Northuldra before the mom sings them a song and puts them to sleep. However, fans have pointed out the weird part of this is how the dad paints the Northuldra as these monstrous people, and the mom doesn't really say anything, despite that it's her heritage and that she was the one who saved him in the first place. Well, here is where the theory begins. Some fans believe that after the mom saves the dad, they go back to the castle, and when the dad is questioned after being the only one to return, the mom ends up becoming a prisoner. However, already in love with her, the dad convinces the guards to take her to the trolls, who then wipe her memory of anything Northuldra so that she can be released as a prisoner of war and the pair can marry. I mean, there is normal evil, and then there is casting a memory spell on your spouse so that they don't remember their heritage evil. Plus, this also would connect the evil troll theory and explain why the dad would already know of the trolls and where to take Elsa in the first movie. So yeah, it would be pretty messed up if this turned out to be true. Coming in at number 3, Kristoff's coat. When it comes to the animal sidekicks in any Disney movie, there is a general consensus that they are too good for this world and that nothing bad should ever happen to them. And of course, this feeling carries through to the adorable reindeer Sven. Now, one of the most wonderful parts about Sven is the sweet backstory and friendship he has with Kristoff. The pair meet as calf and toddler, respectively, and become attached at the hip, taking on the world together. However, there is a theory out there that is Bambi level tragic and would change quite literally everything about the dynamic of their relationship. Essentially, the theory points out that Kristoff's coat appears to be made from reindeer fur, and that as a baby, we see Kristoff wrapped in a reindeer pelt. Now, the dark part is that some out there believe the pelt is in fact from Sven's mother, and that the ice harvesters must have killed Sven's mother and then wrapped young Kristoff in her pelt. Now smelling of his dead mother, Sven became attached, and Kristoff is just going through life wearing the dead carcass of his best friend's mom on his back. I mean, I don't even want to go there. Coming in at number 2, the parents. There are quite a few theories surrounding the parents of Anna and Elsa. However, this one might just be the darkest one I came across. The theory starts off by pointing out that the queen and king don't exactly deal with Elsa's powers in the healthiest way. You know, the shame, the guilt, and hiding her away from the public and all only made matters worse. What if that was actually all a part of their master evil plan the whole time? There are some fans out there that theorize Elsa's parents treated her this way as they were trying to turn her into a weapon of war that could be used against their enemies, and that their questionable handling of her gifts was all to make her more dangerous. Plus, if she remained a secret, then no one could see her coming. One of the main pieces of evidence behind this theory is that Hans somehow magically had shackles ready to go in the castle to imprison Anna. But many have pointed out that Hans wouldn't exactly have had the time to create these shackles, which then led fans to deduce that they would have already had to be there in the first place. Which then of course would mean that long ago the king and queen created this prison with the idea to contain Elsa. I mean, if that turned out to be true, that would put them up there with some of the most evil parents in Disney history. And last up in our number 1 spot, Hans isn't the villain. So back to those pesky little Norse trolls, this theory popped up on Reddit from the user individualmushroom3, and let's just say it points out a few more reasons why those trolls should not be trusted. Reddit user starts off by saying that the change in Hans from Disney prince to Disney villain is extremely sudden, and that he thinks the trolls are actually behind the personality shift. Reddit friend explains that when Kristoff takes Anna to the trolls to save her, they make it clear that she's the perfect match for Kristoff. However, when Kristoff tells them during the song that Anna is engaged to someone else, the trolls sing so she's a bit of a fixer-upper, her brain's a bit betwixt, get the fiancé out of the way, and the whole thing will be fixed. This theory suggests that the trolls are so fixated on fixing up Kristoff and Anna that they cast a spell on Hans to turn him into the villain, so that Anna will leave him and instead end up with Kristoff. And if this turns out to be true, this would essentially mean that the lovable singing trolls are the real villains the whole time.
Starting off this countdown, we have the secret tunnel system. I know I've talked about this before, but Walt Disney created a whole underground tunnel system for the characters to have a break, and it's for them to secretly get around the park without walking everywhere in costume. This way, this all preserves the magical feel of Disney. But some employees shared what really goes on down there. First off, they said that the tunnel system is fairly confusing, and on a number of occasions, people have gotten lost down there. One employee said that they had just got a job playing a Disney mascot character and went down into the tunnels and had no clue where to go. He went to ask other employees for help, but since he was new, they kind of just brushed him off. Another employee revealed that some of the cast members like to get it on during their breaks down in the tunnel system. So while you're up above having fun, they're down below having fun. Just in a different way, if you understand what I'm getting at. Coming in at number 9, we have the waiting lines. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. I think the one flaw about Disney are its lines. Seriously, nobody's got time for that. But a couple of years ago, a huge scandal broke out involving Disney and their waiting lines. Basically, rich families were paying tour guides that have access to these special passes for the disabled. Basically, with this pass, you get brought right to the top of the line because Disney wants guests with disabilities to have a great time. But wealthy, able people were abusing this, which is absolutely sickening. Can't believe people were actually doing this just to scam the system. Moving on to number 8, we have the overnighter. For this next point, let's move back along to Disney's tunnel system. So remember I talked about how new employees often get lost down in the tunnels? Well, there's this creepy urban legend about this happening to a new employee. So he finished his shift and went down to the tunnels to change. As he was making his way out, the lights in the tunnel shut off, and he was in the complete darkness. Now, he had trouble already finding the exit with the lights on. Now with the lights off, it was even more difficult. He ended up wandering around the tunnel system for hours before collapsing from exhaustion. He ended up staying there overnight. His coworkers found him in the morning. He was freezing cold and super scared. So now this story is kind of used to scare new employees. In our 7th spot, we have the suspicious death. So in 2012, a man's body was found near the Mickey and Friends parking structure at Disneyland. Police just assumed the man took his own life, but no witnesses ever reported seeing this man jump. Now what's weird is that I tried to search more into this case, but I couldn't find anything. We don't know what truly happened to this man and how he passed away, which is a little suspicious to me. In our 6th spot, we have Yes Man. So this story was shared by a former Disney employee that worked near the Indiana Jones ride. So his job was to dress up as an adventurer and just stand around. But he said he was often attacked by kids, and Disney told him that he just kind of had to take it. So these kids would often be super psyched to go on this ride, and so they were in costume and had plastic weapons. He said on a number of occasions, kids would come up to him and literally whip him with their weapons. Or he would get asked to duel, and he always had to say yes. So kids would just be jabbing him with their plastic swords. Yeah, that's not a job I would like. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Winnie the Pooh gets sued. I thought that was so clever. Like, I was typing that and I came up with that and I'm like, pat on the back. Good job, Lindsay. Anyway, in 1978, a guest at the park sued Disney and a cast member, claiming that the cast member playing Winnie the Pooh slapped their daughter. In 1981, their case was brought to court, and the cast member showed up in the Winnie the Pooh costume. He argued that their daughter was tugging on his costume, he turned around and accidentally knocked her over. And then in court, he proceeded to show the jury his costume's arms, saying it's not even physically possible for him to do that in the first place, you know, with his little limited movement. In the end, Disney ended up winning, but still, what a wild day at court. And I love how he showed up in costume. Coming in at number 4, we have the Deadly Ride. On June 26, 2007, a female guest passed away on the Rock and Roller Coaster avec Aerosmith ride at Disneyland Paris. After the ride was done, people noticed her unconscious. The paramedics arrived, but failed to revive her. Sadly, she passed away. Now, in articles, it said that the ride wasn't going to reopen until they found out how and why she passed. But there's no follow-up articles outlining what went wrong on the ride. And it's not like she was 80 years old and had health conditions. No, she was fairly young. I just wish Disney let us know what happened, because the ride has been up and running ever since, but no official statement was ever released. In our 3rd spot, we have Disney's jail. Did you know that Disney has its own specific jail for criminals? Yeah, if you're caught breaking any of Disney's rules, you'll be escorted to Disney jail. Employees describe it as an underground room with bars on the windows. There's no bright colors or Mickeys decorating the area. Now, what causes you to be sent to Disney jail? Well, if you get too rowdy or too intoxicated at the park, if you smoke certain substances at the park, or if you're caught shoplifting. You get the picture. Disney is actually very strict when it comes to this. People caught shoplifting aren't even given a warning sometimes. Instead, they're just sent straight to their jail. From there, you can be fined, kicked out of the park, banned from ever coming back to the park, or all of the above. In our 2nd spot, we have Blake Lively's arrest. Believe it or not, but actress Blake Lively was once sent to Disney jail. Yeah, so basically her and her brother both snuck into Disneyland's park. What they did is put hairspray on the stamps of somebody that came out of the park and then put their hands together, and that transferred the stamp. Then they got to go in the park for free. Except Blake and her brother were caught by an undercover Disney cop and sent to Disney jail. I'm telling you, Disney has way too many undercover cops, like they're everywhere. Which is a good thing for safety, but also kind of a bad thing because, you know, they're watching your every move. And in our number 1 spot, we have The Battle. This story comes from a Disney employee that worked at a store at the Disney park near the Indiana Jones ride. One time, 30 kids ran into the store and each grabbed a toy sword from the bin, you know, so that they could be just like Indiana Jones. But then the kids started attacking the 2 workers in the store. with their swords. And obviously the workers aren't allowed to like yell at the kids or panic or fight back, so they just let the kids attack them until their parents noticed and called them off. By then, he says his arms were already covered in cuts and bruises and he was bleeding. Yeah, maybe those weapons should be like placed behind the counter or something, you know, so things like that don't happen. Or maybe Disney should just have a better policy, I don't know.